Long ago, in a village nestled deep in the shadow of a mountain, there lived a proud and powerful chief named Dalu. Chief Dalu was a man of great authority, respected not only for his wealth, but also for his wisdom in leading the people. His word was law, and his expectations were high, especially for his children. Among them was his only daughter, Adanna, whose beauty was unmatched and whose gentle spirit made her beloved by all in the village. From the time Adanna was a child, her father dreamed of the day she would marry a man of noble standing, one who would bring even more power and respect to their family. He envisioned her wedding as a grand union with a neighboring chief's son, or perhaps even a prince from a distant land. To him, Adanna's future was not her own. It was tied to the greatness he wished for their lineage. But Adanna, with her soft eyes and kind heart, had a different view of love. She did not care for power, riches, or titles. In her eyes, love was something simple and pure, a bond between two souls, not a matter of status. She believed love could be found in the heart of any man, regardless of his background. One day, as Adanna walked by the river collecting flowers, she met a young man named Kelechi. He was not of noble birth. He was a humble farmer, known for his gentle nature and the strength of his character. Kelechi lived simply, working the land to provide for his aging parents. His hands were calloused from hard labor, and his clothes were plain, but his heart was as warm as the sun. Over time, Adanna and Kelechi grew close, meeting by the river to talk, laugh, and share their dreams. Before long, they fell deeply in love. When Kelechi finally gathered the courage to approach Chief Dalu to ask for Adanna's hand in marriage, he knew the risk he was taking. He had no wealth, no title, and no noble blood, but his love for Adanna gave him the strength to face the chief. Kelechi knelt before Chief Dalu in the grand courtyard of his compound. "Great chief," he began respectfully, "I come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I may not be rich, but my love for her is true, and I promise to care for her with all my heart." The moment Kelechi finished speaking, Chief Dalu's face hardened like stone. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the young farmer kneeling before him. "You," the chief thundered, his voice filled with disbelief and anger. "You dare ask for my daughter's hand? You, a simple farmer with nothing to your name. Do you think love alone is enough for Adanna? She is meant for greatness, not for poverty." Kelechi bowed his head, his heart heavy, but he did not retreat. "I may be a farmer, but I will work hard to provide for her. I will give her a life filled with love and respect." But Chief Dalu would not be swayed. "My daughter will not marry beneath her. You are not worthy of her, and you never will be. Leave my presence and never return." Heartbroken but determined, Kelechi left the chief's compound. When Adanna learned of her father's refusal, she ran to him, tears in her eyes. "Father," she pleaded, "you cannot deny me my love for Kelechi. He is kind and hard-working, and I love him with all my heart." But Chief Dalu's pride would not allow him to listen. "You are my daughter, Adanna, and I will decide who is worthy of you. I will not allow you to marry a man without status or wealth. You are destined for a greater future than what this farmer can offer." Adanna's heart ached, but she could see that her father would not be moved. That night, she made a difficult decision. She loved Kelechi deeply, and she could not imagine a life without him. So, with a heavy heart, she gathered her belongings and went to Kelechi's home. Together, they left the village under the cover of darkness, choosing love over the wealth and power her father had planned for her. But years passed, and Adanna and Kelechi built a life together in a neighboring village. Though they had little in material wealth, they were rich in love and happiness. Kelechi worked the land, and Adanna wove beautiful garments, which she sold in the marketplace. Together, they raised a daughter, Neka, who was as beautiful and kind as her mother. Meanwhile, back in her father's village, Chief Dalu's heart grew cold and bitter. Though many noble suitors came to ask for Adanna's hand, the chief refused them all, for none could compare to the vision of greatness he had once held for her. Over time, Dalu became consumed by his loneliness and the loss of his daughter. His people began to whisper that the chief's pride had cost him his most precious treasure. One day, a terrible drought struck the land. The crops withered and the rivers dried up. Chief Dalu's village suffered greatly, and despite his wealth and power, there was nothing he could do to stop the suffering of his people. The village elders gathered to discuss what should be done, and they spoke of a neighboring village where the crops were still flourishing despite the drought. It was said that the people of this village were led by a humble farmer and his wife, who were known for their wisdom and generosity. Desperate for help, Chief Dalu swallowed his pride and traveled to this village. When he arrived, he was greeted by a beautiful young girl who reminded him of someone he had once known. The girl led him to her parents, and when Dalu saw them, his heart nearly stopped. Before him stood Adanna and Kelechi, their faces filled with kindness and surprise. The chief could hardly believe his eyes. His daughter, the one he had cast aside, had built a life filled with love and abundance. Adanna stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Father," she said, "you refused to accept me because I chose love over power. But love has brought me more than I could ever have imagined. We have built a life of happiness, and the people here thrive because we live in harmony with one another." Tears filled Chief Dalu's eyes as he realized the depth of his mistake. He had let his pride blind him to what truly mattered. "Adanna," he whispered, "I was wrong. I thought wealth and status were the most important things, but I see now that love is greater than any riches. Can you ever forgive me?" Adanna looked at her father with compassion. "I have long forgiven you, father. Love is not something to be measured by wealth or power. It is something that grows, even when everything else fades." From that day forward, Chief Dalu stayed in the village with his daughter and her family, learning the true meaning of love, humility, and forgiveness. He came to understand that the greatest wealth was not in gold or power, but in the bonds of family and the love that endured through all trials. And so the chief's heart softened, and he spent the rest of his days in peace, surrounded by the love he had once refused to see.